Nathan Cole's story didn't really start with his recent promotion, or even the growing cracks in his marriage. No, it went back years, to a time when he found himself caught in the middle of a crisis that no one saw coming. Back then, Harding Containers had landed in serious trouble over an environmental compliance issue. The company had been flagged for mishandling waste, and as the pressure mounted from regulators demanding costly upgrades, the threat of layoffs started to hang over everyone's heads. Nathan, who'd always had a sharp eye for detail, noticed a critical error buried in the paperwork from an outside contractor. His discovery ended up being a game-changer, sparing the company from steeper penalties and earning him quiet recognition from the leadership team as someone who could step up when it mattered. That moment didn't just mark a professional win, it added to a history of Nathan facing tough situations head-on. One of those earlier moments came before his son Lucas was even born. Nathan had been driving home from a friend's bachelor party when everything changed in a split second. A drunk driver swerved across the center line, slamming into Nathan's car. The crash left him with a broken arm and a lasting fear of driving at night. Although he eventually healed physically, the emotional scars lingered. That harrowing experience shaped him. He became more cautious, more deliberate, and those traits would later define how he approached both parenting and his career. In the early chapters of his marriage to Vanessa, they were thrown another curveball. A tornado tore through their neighborhood, severely damaging the tiny apartment they'd been living in. For weeks, they bounced between insurance calls and salvage trips while living out of a cheap motel. Strangely enough, that disaster had brought them closer back then. At least, it seemed to. They leaned on each other to rebuild their little world, and in those days, Nathan genuinely believed they could handle anything life threw at them. But over time, Vanessa changed. Her patience wore thin, her compassion faded, and any challenge became a reason to blame Nathan or withdraw. When Nathan's younger brother Eli hit a rough patch and moved in briefly, Vanessa barely hid her contempt. Eli was struggling with addiction, and Nathan stepped in as both brother and peacekeeper, trying to juggle Eli's needs without disrupting his son Lucas's life. Eventually, Eli got help and turned things around, but the tension that period created in their home never fully lifted. Vanessa, in particular, made sure it was never forgotten. She brought it up often, using it as ammunition anytime she felt slighted. Amid all that, Nathan still found ways to pour himself into what mattered. One of his proudest moments came during Lucas's grade school years when he designed and built a custom playground for the local school as part of a community project. With his machinist skills, Nathan spent countless hours fabricating the equipment and managing the installation. That playground became a cherished spot in the neighborhood, and Lucas loved bragging to his friends about the awesome park his dad built. But behind the scenes, Nathan had another passion, one that he rarely talked about. Tucked away in his garage was a half-restored 1972 Triumph Bonneville. When he could find the time, he worked on it in quiet solitude, imagining one day finishing it and taking long rides through the countryside. Lately, though, that dream felt more distant than ever as life piled on more and more responsibilities. Still, that day had brought a rare win. Nathan wiped the sweat from his brow, a faint smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. He'd finally been promoted to shift supervisor at Harding Containers, a goal he'd quietly chased for years. The new role came with more responsibility, sure, but it also offered a silver lining, the night shift. It meant Nathan could be there for Lucas's games and school events during the day, without sacrificing his job. Having worked nights before, he knew he could handle the transition. With a few paid days off before his new schedule kicked in, Nathan decided it was finally time to tackle a long-delayed project, turning the space above his detached garage into a quiet little apartment. His vision was simple, a peaceful place where he could rest undisturbed during daylight hours. But before any real progress could be made, there was a problem to fix. The Wi-Fi didn't reach that far. Determined to sort it out, he climbed into the attic to run a cable. As he maneuvered through the crawl space, focused on the task, a faint noise caught his attention. He paused. The house was supposed to be empty. Vanessa was at work. Lucas was visiting his grandparents for the day. But there it was again, a sound, low but unmistakable, coming from the bedroom. Nathan's chest tightened. Carefully, silently, he crawled toward the noise. Peering through a poorly sealed attic vent, what he saw knocked the air out of him. There, in the bed they'd once shared, was Vanessa with another man. Frozen, heart pounding, Nathan stared in stunned silence. He reached for his phone, hands shaking, and began recording. Every word, every movement, every betrayal. The man, a smug delivery driver named Rick Dawson, who Vanessa worked with, grinned and said with a chuckle, "I like this setup. Your husband doesn't even lay a hand on you. Don't bring Nathan into this, Vanessa snapped, her voice tinged with guilt, but not enough to stop. We're literally in his bed, Vanessa. What does that say about us? Rick teased, laughing. Vanessa sighed, clearly uneasy. I don't know why I let you talk me into this. We could have gone to your place. It would have been smarter. But that's the whole point, he replied with a smirk. The risk, the thrill, it's what makes it exciting. Nathan's grip on his phone tightened. The arrogance. The betrayal. The absolute disregard for everything he'd worked so hard to build. It was soul-crushing. But he stayed still. He kept quiet. He had the evidence now, and he wasn't going to act on rage. Once the house finally fell silent again, Nathan climbed down from the attic like a ghost, each step heavier than the last. His mind spun with disbelief, fury, and heartbreak. This wasn't just a one-time betrayal, it was a deliberate act of disrespect. Vanessa hadn't just cheated. She discarded their life together and mocked it in the process. Later that evening, standing under a stream of hot water in the shower, Nathan let the truth settle in. His marriage was finished. Whatever love he once felt had been snuffed out by the sheer cruelty of Vanessa's choices. But he wasn't going to let her drag him down with her. His thoughts turned to Lucas. His son still had 2 years left of high school, and Nathan wasn't about to let Vanessa's actions rob him of being the father Lucas deserved. Vanessa could do whatever she pleased now. Nathan was done caring. The garage apartment, once envisioned as a quiet escape from the noise of daily life, was suddenly reimagined as the foundation of his independence. That very evening, he reached out to several contractors, determined to transform the space into a fully livable studio, complete with a kitchenette and a private bathroom. Thanks to his recent promotion, Nathan didn't have to stress over doing the work himself. For once, he had the financial breathing room to pay professionals and spare himself the hassle. It was in that moment he truly grasped the value of his own time. All those years he'd spent stretching every dollar for a shared future, one now poisoned by betrayal, felt meaningless. Especially since, in the end, Vanessa could walk away with half. From that point on, his focus shifted entirely. It would be Nathan and Lucas, no one else. By the time Lucas headed off to college, Nathan vowed to have a solid game plan for what came next, a life with boundaries, dignity, and absolutely no tolerance for disrespect. That evening, Vanessa came through the door, catching Nathan seated calmly at the kitchen table. He watched her as she walked in, taking in her appearance with a new clarity. She looked older, somehow heavier, too, worn in a way he hadn't fully registered before. A flicker of sadness passed through him, but it didn't last. Her decisions had carved this path. You're home early, Vanessa said, surprise creeping into her voice. Yeah, Nathan replied flatly. Something came up at work. I'm starting the night shift tonight, so I came home to get some rest before it begins. They've got you working nights after already doing a day shift, she asked, pretending to sound concerned. You really should get some sleep. That's the plan, he said evenly. I'll wash the bedding, she offered quickly, probably remembering exactly what state their bed had been in earlier that day. No need, Nathan said without emotion. I'll sleep in the guest room. Later that night, instead of heading to the plant, Nathan drove to a nearby sports bar. He ordered a couple of beers, watched the game, and let his mind settle. When he returned home, the house was quiet. Vanessa was already asleep. He parked in the garage and unrolled an air mattress in the unfinished apartment. To his surprise, he slept more soundly than he had in weeks. The next morning, one of the contractors got back to him with a quote that was both reasonable and came with a near-immediate start date. They could begin on Monday and be done in just 2 weeks. Without hesitation, Nathan signed the agreement. As he imagined the apartment taking shape, something stirred inside him: purpose. A quiet, steady determination. This wasn't just home improvement. It was the groundwork for a life that belonged to him again. One free from deception. Sunday evening, Nathan reported to his first shift as a supervisor, arriving early and ready to hit the ground running. The schedule was ideal, Sunday through Thursday nights, with Fridays and Saturdays off. He didn't mention the promotion to Vanessa. Why should he? She clearly had her own secrets. He wasn't about to share his successes with someone who had treated him like a fool. By the time he got home Monday morning, Vanessa had already left for work, and the construction crew was hammering away on the apartment. Nathan spoke with the foreman to confirm the plan, then headed inside to try and sleep. Unfortunately, the noise and an obnoxiously persistent landline ringing in the guest room interrupted him. Half asleep, he grabbed the receiver. "Hello?" he muttered. "Nathan, sorry to wake you," came Beverly's voice, his mother-in-law. "Is that why you called?" "Just to make sure I was actually asleep." Nathan snapped. There's no need to get snippy, she said, defensive. Rick and I just wanted to check in. We know you're working nights now. Let us know if you need help with Lucas. Nathan didn't respond. He hung up mid-sentence, yanked the phone cord from the wall, and mumbled to himself about how oblivious people could be. A moment later, he was back asleep. By Friday, the transformation was complete, and it blew Nathan away. In just 4 days, the crew had done what would have taken him months. That afternoon, he went shopping for furniture, a bed, a compact dining set, a sofa, and essential appliances, TV, fridge, microwave, oven. As he stood in the middle of the finished apartment, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time: control. This was the beginning of his second act, a clean break from the wreckage Vanessa had left behind. By Monday afternoon, the apartment was fully furnished and ready for him to move in. He even laughed to himself, remembering Vanessa's reaction the day she came home and saw the workers bustling around the garage. She'd pulled him aside, clearly irritated. "What's going on?" she demanded. "I'm finishing the apartment above the garage," Nathan replied calmly. "I need a quiet, insulated spot to sleep during the day while I'm working nights. No noise, no interruptions, no landline ringing off the hook. This way, I won't bother you or Lucas. You probably won't even know I'm there." Vanessa's face darkened. "You're my husband. Lucas's father," she said, as if the words still carried weight. "We should notice you're nearby," Vanessa said sharply. "I'll take Lucas to his practices and games, and we'll have family dinners. That's what really matters." Nathan smirked, unfazed. "I told you, when you're in the mood for some actual intimacy, just say so. But so far, you've been awfully quiet." Vanessa scowled. "You're being childish. Marriage is more than just sex. It's about talking, connecting, building a life." Nathan leaned back, his tone dry. "Save the TED Talk. I've carried more than my share of this marriage. Just let me know when you're ready to participate." "I'm not some animal waiting to be summoned," she snapped. "You want anything from me, start with an apology and a proper night out. Otherwise, forget it." Nathan just grinned and walked away, leaving Vanessa fuming and more than a little confused. Even though she'd finally managed to put the brakes on Rick Dawson's push for more risky encounters, she couldn't shake how distant Nathan had become. Once attentive to a fault, he now barely acknowledged her existence, and that gnawed at her. Still, she clung to the idea that he wouldn't last long without craving her attention again. She told herself an apology would come eventually. By Wednesday, Nathan had officially moved into the garage apartment. The upcoming Labor Day weekend gave him a rare 3-day break, and with Lucas's school starting Tuesday, he wanted to make the most of it. "How about we hit the Diamondbacks game Saturday?" he asked over dinner. "They're playing the Dodgers. It's a Big One pennant race." "That's awesome. Thanks, Dad." Lucas lit up immediately. "I don't even like baseball," Vanessa muttered. "I'll just stay home." "I figured as much," Nathan said, not bothering to hide the jab. "It's settled. Lucas and I are going. Can I tell Scooter?" "He's gonna lose his mind. He's a Dodgers fan," Lucas said, already reaching for his phone. "Invite him," Nathan said with a smile. "It's always better with a friend." "Thanks, Dad," Lucas shouted as he rushed off. "You really made his day," Vanessa said with a forced smile. "Baseball's a good way to bond with boys. Scooter's a polite kid. His real name's Miles, isn't it?" Nathan laughed. "Poor kid. His dad died a couple years ago," Vanessa added, ignoring the joke. "They moved here to be close to family." "Well, I'll stick with Scooter," Nathan said as Lucas returned, beaming. "His mom said yes, he's in." Nathan grinned. "It's gonna be a great game." On Saturday afternoon, Nathan pulled up in front of a modest ranch-style house. Before he could turn off the engine, Scooter darted out the front door and jumped into the truck beside Lucas. "Mr. Cole, my mom wants to meet you first," Scooter said, grinning. "She probably wants to make sure you're not some serial killer." "Sorry." Nathan chuckled and stepped out, walking up to ring the doorbell. A lean woman in her early 40s answered, dressed in joggers and a tank top. Nothing flashy, yet her toned legs didn't go unnoticed. "Let me guess," she said playfully. "You think my legs are my best feature?" Nathan froze for a beat, then laughed. "Well, I wasn't gonna say it, but I wouldn't argue. You think I should let my kid go to a ball game with some guy who stares at women?" she teased. "I'm trying to raise a gentleman, you know. I'll make sure he learns to respect women and how to appreciate beauty subtly," Nathan replied with a grin. "As long as he also learns to stand up for himself when people call him Miles, we're good," she said with a wink. "I've got that covered," Nathan smiled. "By the way, what do your friends call you?" "Monroe." Unless you're one of my male friends, then it's Minx or Bubbles, she said, laughing. Minx it is, Nathan said, tipping an imaginary hat. See you later, Minx. Take care of my son, she called after him. He can go with you anytime. The game was a hit, literally. Scooter caught a foul ball, and both boys devoured more hot dogs and sodas than any doctor would recommend. On the drive home, they passed out in the back seat, full and happy. At Scooter's house, Nathan helped the half-asleep teen to the front door. Monroe greeted them, smiling. Pretty sure we overdid it on the ballpark food, Nathan admitted. That's what games are for, she said warmly. Thanks for looking out for him. He's a great kid, Minx. See you at the next one, Nathan said, heading back to his truck. Soon, Nathan had settled into a rhythm. He slept soundly in his insulated apartment from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m., thanks to thick blackout curtains and solid soundproofing. Vanessa occasionally griped about him holing up in his man cave, even on weekends, but she always backed off the moment he asked if she was in the mood. He knew what really bothered her. She didn't want to risk running into Dawson again and getting caught. And frankly, her reluctance to cause more waves worked in Nathan's favor. As long as she kept playing it safe, he had the space to plan his next moves and keep the marriage technically intact until Lucas graduated. With his new role as foreman, Nathan no longer had to do as much hands-on labor, so he treated himself to a home gym setup, one of those total body machines from a late-night ad. To his surprise, it actually worked, as long as he kept at it consistently. Outside of work and workouts, his top priority became Lucas's baseball season. Nathan never missed a practice. Before long, the coach noticed his dedication and began assigning him to help work with some of the kids on the sidelines while he focused on the main drills. Lucas was already one of the team's best players, and he just kept improving. But the real standout story was Scooter. At first, Scooter had the raw potential, but his confidence was shot, and he played like he was afraid to make a mistake. Nathan took it personally. He saw a kid who just needed someone to believe in him. So every weekend, Nathan showed up at the local park, gloves and gear in hand, giving Scooter one-on-one time, building him up. With things at home colder than ever, Nathan found peace in baseball. It gave him something worthwhile to pour his energy into, a kind of therapy that didn't require talking. And it worked. Scooter began playing with fire. His movements sharpened. His throws were crisper. He went from invisible to indispensable. By mid-season, he was one of the team's strongest shortstops and hitting with real consistency. Meanwhile, Lucas had locked down the center field position and was batting third in the lineup. Watching both boys thrive brought Nathan a deep, steady sense of pride, one that had been missing for far too long. There was one thing Nathan found harder and harder to ignore. He was starting to draw quite a bit of attention from some of the other baseball moms. His offhand jokes often landed better than he expected, met with laughter that lingered a beat too long. Compliments about his coaching help were frequent, almost too enthusiastic. And it didn't stop there. Some of the moms would bake treats for the team, but somehow Nathan always ended up with his own specially packed portion, regardless of what was on the menu. As Lucas and Scooter's friendship deepened, Nathan found himself spending more time with Scooter's mom, Monroe. She was sharp, quick-witted, and had a grounded sense of humor that Nathan appreciated more with every conversation. One warm afternoon, his curiosity finally got the better of him. "Hey, Monroe, can I ask you something kind of personal?" he said cautiously, choosing his words. "You're not about to ask my bra size, are you?" She shot back, raising an eyebrow and smirking. "What? No." Nathan stammered, clearly caught off guard. "Just saying guys usually warm up a personal question with a line like that," she said, grinning. "Fair enough," Nathan chuckled. "But seriously, have you noticed how a few of the moms have been? I don't know, extra friendly lately?" Monroe leaned back, eyes twinkling. "You're just now noticing? Let me lay it out for you. The most friendly moms on the team? All single. To them, you're a unicorn, dedicated dad, decent guy, and fully employed. That's high-value territory in suburbia. But I'm married," Nathan pointed out, almost as a reminder to himself. "Isn't that kind of a deal-breaker?" "They know you're married," Monroe said plainly. "That's why none of them have made a direct move. Yet. Doesn't mean they aren't circling." "No one's crossed any lines," Nathan said quickly. "But I'm not interested. I'm not available. That's it." Monroe hesitated for a second, then exhaled. "Look, I don't love being the one to tell you this, but you and I are friends, so here goes. Everyone knows Vanessa's cheating on you. And there's talk that she's completely cut you off. The word going around is your marriage is on life support, and those moms? They're just waiting for the plug to be pulled." Nathan felt the air go still. His jaw tightened. How do they even know about any of that? Who's airing out my private life? And then it clicked, of course. It's Dawson. Vanessa probably told him everything, and he can't keep his mouth shut to save his life. Do you mean Vanessa, or her boyfriend? Monroe quipped, trying to lighten the mood. Nathan managed a dry smile. You're not wrong. You don't seem all that surprised, she added gently. Did you already suspect her? I didn't suspect, Nathan replied. I knew. I caught them together. In our bed. That killed any doubt. Monroe's jaw dropped. You walked in on them? And you stayed? You didn't punch anyone? Nope. I kept my head. My focus was Lucas. He still needs both of us around. So I stayed. Moved into the garage apartment. Told Vanessa it was because of my night shifts. And she just went along with it? She didn't love the idea, Nathan said, shrugging. But Dawson told her if she so much as touched me, he'd stop sleeping with her. That was enough to keep her away. Monroe looked genuinely disgusted. That's insane. Vanessa's behavior is inexcusable. And Dawson sounds like a teenage dirtbag in a grown man's body. Nathan gave a faint smile. For what it's worth, I didn't think anyone would be interested in someone like me. Don't sell yourself short, Monroe said, shaking her head. You're smart, good with kids, emotionally available. If I weren't so plain, and, as you so delicately didn't ask, flat-chested, I'd have already made a move. Nathan laughed, caught off guard again. Thanks for being real with me. I had no clue I was even on anyone's radar, or that half the bleachers knew about my personal disaster. It's not humiliating, Nathan. You're doing your best to be a great dad, and everyone sees that, she said, more serious now. Even Miles thinks you're awesome. Nathan grinned. Miles? Who's that? Oh my God, Monroe groaned, smiling. Scooter. Only someone as clueless as you would pretend not to remember. You're a solid friend, Monroe, Nathan said sincerely. Thanks for the reality check. I just hope Lucas isn't picking up on too much, she added, her expression softening. He knows something's off between you and Vanessa. He's not stupid. He'll figure it out eventually, Nathan said. I just hope it doesn't hit him too hard. Speaking of awkward, Monroe added, Scooter's got a little crush on Savannah Dawson. Yikes, Nathan said. She seems sweet. Too bad her dad's a moron. Let's just hope Lucas sticks with Avery Morgan, Monroe replied. She's a good kid. Quiet, grounded. No drama. She's definitely into him, Nathan agreed. Maybe something good will come out of this whole mess. 2 nights later, Lucas's team faced off in the first round of the district championships, and Nathan was more nervous than he cared to admit. His anxiety wasn't helped by the fact that the usual trio of single moms seemed especially focused on him that night. April Summers had on a dangerously low-cut top that left little to the imagination. Every time she bent over to look for something, her chest practically brushed his arm. Lena Rhodes was less showy but no less strategic. She wore a snug sweater that clung to her slim waist and flattered every curve. She kept him talking, asking an endless string of innocent questions about the team. Then there was Monica Fields. Subtlety wasn't her strong suit. She stood close. Very close. So close that her chest pressed up against Nathan's side whenever she leaned in to say something. Amused but a little overwhelmed, Nathan gratefully accepted a soda and hot dog from Monroe, who handed them over with a knowing look before heading off to her usual spot near first base. Not long after, he noticed something odd. All 3 women suddenly left his side in unison, without a word. Then he heard a familiar voice, icy and loud. Well, look at this, Vanessa announced from behind. I decided to show up and support my husband and son today. Didn't realize I'd have to push through your fan club just to get to you. Nathan turned slowly, his expression unreadable. What's going on, Nathan? She asked sharply, her eyes scanning the crowd of women around him. The game hasn't started yet, but Lucas looked sharp in batting practice, Nathan said calmly, carefully sidestepping Vanessa's pointed tone. Oh, nice dodge, Vanessa snapped. What's the deal with all these women buzzing around you like flies on sugar? Good thing you're not allergic to silicone. Nathan gave a casual shrug. If you're expecting me to explain how the female mind works, you're out of luck. I'm as lost as anyone. Honestly, I'm more surprised you're here. It's an important game for Lucas, she said, straightening her shoulders. Of course I came to support him. Though it seems some of the moms are here with more than just baseball in mind. You've missed plenty of his games before, Nathan replied, his voice neutral but edged. Funny how your schedule opened up today. Vanessa stiffened, her jaw tightening. For a moment, doubt flickered. Was he on to her? But no. Nathan was far too composed. If he knew, really knew, she'd already be paying for it. I made time, she said coldly. Lucas matters, and that makes this important to me. Plus, with your night shifts, we barely see each other. I thought we could cheer him on together. They found seats in the bleachers, but it didn't take long before Vanessa felt something off. She noticed several mothers exchanging glances in her direction, and their expressions weren't exactly friendly. She couldn't figure it out. She'd barely spoken to any of them. Then her eyes landed on Monroe. She sat nearby, dressed simply, yet those toned legs and snug athletic shorts drew attention, especially in the cool evening air. Not flashy, but undeniably confident. It bugged Vanessa more than she expected. The game kicked off, and Nathan's focus immediately shifted to the field. After 2 quick strikeouts, Lucas stepped up to bat. Vanessa's breath caught when the first pitch nearly clipped his helmet. The next pitch was low and outside, but Lucas didn't hesitate. He connected solidly, sending the ball deep into left field for a clean stand-up double. The crowd erupted in cheers. Scooter was up next. Vanessa watched him, surprised by how much he'd grown, not just physically, but in presence. The first pitch came fast and high, brushing close, but the boy didn't flinch. He adjusted, locked in. Trying to scare them off, Nathan muttered under his breath, amused. Bad strategy. The pitcher wound up and fired, a fastball. Scooter met it with a sharp, echoing crack. The ball soared past the outfield and cleared the center field fence. The crowd roared. Lucas trotted home, grinning, and met Scooter at the plate with a triumphant high five. Monroe glowed with pride, her face lit up with the joy only a parent could know. When she glanced at Nathan and saw the shimmer in his eyes, she understood. He'd poured countless hours into helping both boys grow into the players they were tonight. Vanessa, however, sat motionless, watching everything with a tight-lipped expression. She noticed the women who had hovered around Nathan earlier were now keeping their distance. Then it hit her, Monroe. The boy's success, the friendly interactions, the emotional connection, it was all tying Nathan closer to her. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Vanessa's lover was growing impatient. You're telling me you still haven't slept with Nathan since that day at your house? Rick asked, incredulous. You're the one who told me to stay away, Vanessa hissed. He moved into that stupid garage apartment, started working nights, and now we barely speak. You wanted distance. Well, now I've got it. That's insane, Rick muttered. He's not old enough to give up sex completely. Either he's hiding something or he's banging someone else. Maybe both. He's not cheating, Vanessa snapped. Nathan's not like that. He's honest, too honest, actually. He's just focused. Lucas, work, the team. That's all. Rick scoffed. No normal guy gives up a woman like you without a backup plan. Either he's gay or someone else is keeping his bed warm. Vanessa bristled. Nathan's a man of principle. He'd never betray me like that. Rick raised a brow. And what exactly do you call this? This is different, she said softly. It's fun. Temporary. I work hard. Rick, I take care of everything. I deserve a little something for myself. Rick smirked, his tone low. Sure. We'll enjoy it while it lasts. Just let me know when I can really have you. The thought of you in our bed still gets me going. Later, those words played over and over in Vanessa's head as she sat quietly in the bleachers. She couldn't help noticing again how attractive those other women around Nathan were. Confident, flirtatious, and physically fit. It suddenly felt like a threat, a ticking clock. Her gaze drifted to Monroe, who was sitting alone now, watching the game with calm focus. An idea took shape, desperate, but clever. Putting on her warmest smile, Vanessa stood and walked over, settling down beside her. Monroe, so nice to see you again, she said brightly. Miles has really grown into a great ball player. And such a sweet boy. You must be so proud. I am, Monroe replied, clearly cautious. Lucas is doing great, too. Nathan's been such a huge influence on both of them. He really has, Vanessa said, her tone shifting, calculating. Sometimes he's too good. I'm sure you've noticed all those blonde vultures constantly circling him. Monroe raised an eyebrow. You mean the moms with generous assets? Exactly, Vanessa said with a laugh that didn't quite reach her eyes. So here's the thing. I can't always be here because of work. But I trust Nathan around you. You're not his type at all. Monroe blinked. Thanks. I mean that in a good way, Vanessa said quickly. You're safe. So if you could just stick close to him when I'm not around, it'd send the right message. I'll even tell Nathan to stay near you so those other women get the hint. It might be awkward at first, but it'd mean a lot. You'd be helping me protect my marriage. Monroe stared at her for a long second, then tilted her head with a tight smile. "Let me get this straight," she said slowly, her voice dry as sandpaper. "So, let me get this straight," Monroe said, arching a brow. "You're worried some of these attractive, single baseball moms might seduce Nathan, so you want me to run interference? Basically, because you think I'm safe. What? Because I'm not curvy enough? Too plain for temptation." "That's not what I said," Vanessa protested quickly, her voice tightening. "Really? Because it kinda sounded like that." "I just know Nathan," Vanessa said, forcing a polite smile. "He's less likely to get emotionally attached to someone like you than he is to some bleached blonde ex-cheerleader with a surgically enhanced everything. This isn't personal. It's about keeping my husband loyal." Monroe leaned back on the bleacher, arms folded. "Tell me something, Vanessa. If Nathan did cheat, would that be it for you? Or could you live with it? As long as you stayed in the top spot." Vanessa's face darkened. "Are you joking?" "Nope," Monroe replied, her tone neutral. "Just curious." "I love Nathan," Vanessa snapped. "But if he were unfaithful? That's it. Game over. Cheating isn't just sex. It's a betrayal of everything we promised each other. Once that boundary's crossed, it's over. You were married, Monroe. You must understand that." Monroe nodded slowly. "Yeah, I get it. Infidelity cracks the whole foundation. Loyalty's everything in a marriage. I understand why you feel the way you do." Vanessa softened, misreading the moment. "Thanks. I knew you'd get it. So, can I count on you to help? Just stay close to him at games and practices. Make it look like he's spoken for." Monroe smiled sweetly, though her eyes flashed with sarcasm. "Oh, absolutely. Just be sure to fill Nathan in on the plan. I'll do my part. After all, who better to keep a man celibate than a woman who's totally safe, right?" Vanessa, missing the edge in her voice entirely, smiled back. "Thanks, Monroe. I knew I could trust you." With that, she stood and returned to the bleachers, unaware that she'd just lit a very unpredictable fuse. At practice the next day, Nathan brought it up with a bemused shake of his head. "So Vanessa pulled me aside before my shift last night," he said. "She's apparently worried I'm being stalked by every single mom in a 3-county radius. Her solution? She wants me to stick close to you minks. Or, her words, Monroe." Monroe burst out laughing. "Why do I not feel any safer? Nathan, let's be real. No man is truly immune to temptation, no matter how ordinary a woman may appear." Nathan looked at her, his voice softening. "Minx, you're one of the most beautiful women I've ever met. You've got it all. Brains, strength, heart. You're not some plastic trophy, you're real. And that makes you impossible to ignore." Monroe's smile faltered, replaced by a pink flush. "Well, you just made my job harder. I was going to make you stick to the script. Now I'm going to need an eye exam after the season ends." Nathan chuckled. "Don't bother. I see just fine. I just didn't see her clearly until it was too late." Monroe tilted her head. "Maybe she misjudged us, assuming you couldn't possibly be attracted to me." Nathan laughed quietly, and the rest of practice passed with easy conversation and private smiles between them. Other parents began to take notice, and reactions ranged from subtle envy to open disbelief. Monroe had unexpectedly claimed the space no one else could fill, right beside Nathan. The following game was an away match, 3 hours from home. To avoid early morning chaos, the team arranged for players and chaperones to travel the night before and stay in a nearby hotel. Nathan gave a ride to the Winstons and Monroe. Most of the drive was spent discussing the team's chances at district and state. The camaraderie was light and full of laughs, with Monroe chiming in often, keeping the mood comfortable. When they arrived, Nathan helped the Winstons unload their bags. Volunteers like them were assigned to stay with the team, but space was limited, and everyone else had to make their own arrangements. Before Lucas joined his teammates, Nathan pulled him aside. "Stay sharp. Be respectful. I'll see you bright and early at warm-ups tomorrow." "What hotel are you in, Minx?" Nathan asked casually as the Winstons checked in. "Same one as you," she replied smoothly. "I never told you where I was staying," Nathan said, squinting at her in mock suspicion. "You didn't," she answered with a teasing smile. Still puzzled, Nathan motioned to the front desk. "Go check if there's a room open while I check in. If they're full, we'll find something nearby." "No need," she said, still grinning. "I'm covered." Only when Nathan returned to the truck with his room key did the pieces start to fit. He turned to her slowly, keycard in hand. "You wouldn't happen to want a second one of these, would you?" he asked, smiling faintly. "Room 207. She took the card, eyes twinkling. What a gentleman. Then she leaned in and kissed his cheek. Let's get settled. We've got a long night ahead. The next morning, Nathan woke up feeling more exhausted than when he collapsed into bed. Guilt hung heavy over him as the full weight of what had happened settled in. He had crossed a line, broken a vow. But somehow, it didn't feel like a betrayal. It felt like a long overdue release. Minx, Monroe, sat beside him on the edge of the bed, calm and clear-eyed. Let's think this through, she said. Vanessa didn't just cheat on you, she cut you off. She made the decision to share her body with someone else, unprotected, while still married to you. She didn't just cross the line, she burned it down. She's made intimacy with her unsafe. That alone breaks the covenant. Nathan stared at the ceiling, nodding slowly. And just for the record, she added, I've been tested twice. It's been over 2 years since I've been with anyone. I'm on the pill, and I made that decision before tonight. I hoped this would happen, but only if you wanted it. She paused, searching his face. Unless the real issue is that you don't find me attractive. Is that it? Don't you ever say that, Nathan said, his voice low and steady. You're beautiful, Minx. All of you. And yeah, this is new for me. I've never cheated before. But you've made a damn convincing argument, and I'm not looking back. He smiled gently, brushing her cheek. I'm ready. Monroe nodded, her expression suddenly more serious. There's something you should know. Nathan sat up, attentive. My parents, they're both in hospice. It won't be long. Nathan's face fell. I'm so sorry. And my brother, he's been sharing Miles's game footage with a friend who coaches at one of the best prep schools in LA. If things go well, Miles might have a real shot. Nathan nodded, absorbing the shift in tone. Then let's make sure we keep showing them exactly what these boys are capable of. Monroe smiled. Agreed. If Miles lands that scholarship, Monroe said softly, we'll probably move back to LA before next school year. Nathan nodded, already reading between the lines. I really like you, she continued, but this can't be long-term. You're still married, even if your wife stopped acting like it, and I'm a single mom trying to secure a future for my son. I have to put Miles first. I get it, Nathan said, meaning it. I'm happy for Scooter. He's worked hard, and he deserves that chance. You've done right by him, Minx. Monroe gave a wry smile. Funny thing is, you're the reason Miles got that good. And now we may have to leave the guy who helped us the most. Nathan paused, letting the irony sink in. I'm not built for flings. Going without is easier than getting a taste and having to give it up again. You're being dramatic, Monroe laughed. I said probably move in 6 months. That's still 6 months. Unless you think you're too old for that much fun with someone who knows what she's doing. Nathan grinned. So you're saying you can live up to the nickname, Minx? Oh, I'll prove it, she teased. Just whistle when you need me. I'm a decent whistler, Nathan joked. Then you're doing it wrong. She shot back with a smirk. Lucas's team didn't just win, they dominated. State champions. Shortly after, Scooter got the scholarship offer from a top prep school in California. And just before Thanksgiving, life threw Monroe another curveball. Both her parents passed away within a week. Nathan and Lucas attended the funeral. There, Monroe introduced him to her brother. Nathan, this is Cal, my brother. Dex, this is Nathan, Miles's mentor and our friend. Cal, Nathan asked with a raised brow. Only family calls me that, he replied, smiling. Everyone else knows me as Grim. What do you call her? Grim asked with a smirk. Scamp, Nathan said. Don't ask me why. I don't need to, Grim chuckled. Thanksgiving sent Nathan and Lucas back to Vanessa's parents' house. That night, things took a strange turn. Vanessa, seemingly out of nowhere, curled up beside Nathan in bed, wearing a sly smile. It's been a while, she murmured. You must be missing this. Let's make love. Nathan blinked, caught between surprise and disgust. So you're ready now? He asked sarcastically. What changed? Running low on attention. I knew you'd come around, Vanessa whispered, trying to slip closer. Let me put a smile on your face for the holiday. Nathan rolled over. No thanks. Her expression soured instantly. You're such an idiot. Okay, Nathan said flatly. Vanessa lay there, eyes wide open, her thoughts racing. Does he know? Has he been seeing someone? The unease was impossible to ignore. She resolved to speak to Rick soon. If she wanted to keep Nathan off her trail, she needed to start pretending again. Nathan's night shift routine remained unchanged. After work, he'd eat, crash by 9 a.m., and usually wake up just in time for Minx to slide into bed beside him. Intentions unspoken, but always understood. She'd stay an hour, maybe two, then leave before Miles got home. With baseball season over, his evenings were quieter. The arrangement with Minx was unconventional, sure, but it worked. No drama, no demands. Then came December. Nathan had just settled into his shift when his phone buzzed. It was Lucas. Dad, we're hanging out with Savannah and Avery. In Savannah's mom's car. You said we could stay out late since there's no school tomorrow. But we've got a problem. Nathan's grip on the phone tightened. What kind of problem? We hit a curb. Got a flat tire. We're on D Street, across from the old arcade. No spare. And there's a group of guys staring at us from across the street. It's making me nervous. You're where? Nathan snapped. That's not a safe area, Lucas. It's a 2017 Corolla, Lucas added quickly. Silver. Nathan took a breath. Stay put. Lock the doors. If anything happens, call the cops. I'm on my way. He hung up and headed straight for the floor. Spotting Marty, he hurried over. You still have that Corolla, right? Yeah, Marty nodded. Why? I need a real spare. Right now. No problem. I've got one. Let's go. As they moved, Nathan saw Clint Warner, Avery's uncle, passing by. Clint, he called. The kids are stranded on D Street. Flat tire, no spare. Marty has one. You coming? Hell yes, Clint said, already moving. The three men piled into Marty's car and peeled off, urgency thick in the air. That part of town wasn't just sketchy, it was dangerous. Meanwhile, across town, Vanessa lay tangled in sheets, satisfied and relaxed in Rick's arms. His phone buzzed on the nightstand. He picked it up, checked the screen, and groaned. It's Savannah. Vanessa frowned. Your daughter? Yeah. She probably wants something, he muttered. Ignore it, Vanessa said. It can wait. But Rick didn't look so sure. Something about the call lingered. Vanessa couldn't tell if it was guilt, annoyance, or something else entirely. Unbeknownst to her, the cracks in her secret life were growing wider. And Nathan? He was already closing in on the truth, mile by mile. If I don't answer, she'll raise hell about it, Rick muttered, reluctantly picking up the call. Vanessa could only hear his side of the conversation, but the tone shifted fast. What the hell are you doing there? He barked. Well, tough. You're old enough to handle a flat tire. Call AAA or something. And tell your mom to pack a spare next time. He hung up and brushed Vanessa's curiosity away. Nothing serious, he said, reaching for her. Savannah had a flat. Said AAA's on it. But on D Street, the scene was far from harmless. A group of young men hovered around Savannah's car, their body language loud with trouble. As Marty's car pulled up, Nathan jumped out, grabbed the jack and tire iron, and went straight to work. Marty hauled the spare over, and Clint tapped on the driver's window. Stay inside, Clint said firmly. We've got this. And Avery, your mom's gonna have questions. Nathan slid the jack into place and began loosening the lug nuts. One of the men swaggered forward, clearly posturing. You don't touch anything on our turf without permission, he sneered. Nathan didn't flinch. Without a word, he cracked the tire iron into the guy's shins. The man collapsed in agony. Nathan grabbed him by the collar, dragged him over to the flat tire, flipped him face down, and calmly sat on his back, continuing to work. Two more rushed in. Clint met the first with a solid right hook that dropped him instantly. The second stopped in his tracks as Marty stepped forward 6 feet of think twice. Keep cranking the jack, Nathan said evenly as he finished removing the tire. The man beneath him squirmed. Nathan yanked his head back by the greasy hair and growled, Stay down. With the new tire in place, he tightened the lug nuts, nodded to Clint, and stepped back. On his way past the gang leader, his foot accidentally landed square in the man's groin. The scream was satisfying. Nathan turned to the rest of the crew, casually flipping the tire iron in his hand. Anyone else? They scattered without another word. Get going, Clint told the teens. And don't ever come back here. You got lucky tonight. Nathan and the others followed the kid's car to a safer area, then returned to work. You really cracked that guy's shins? Marty asked, laughing on the drive back. He dropped like a sack of bricks. Thanks for letting me tag along, Clint said, rubbing his knuckles. Felt good to throw that punch, though I'll pay for it tomorrow. And you? Marty grinned at Nathan, sitting on him like a lawn chair while changing a tire. That's one for the books. By the next shift, the story had already spread through the plant. Tales of Nathan's no-nonsense heroics and Clint's punch were repeated with admiration and amusement. It became a night shift legend in record time. The following morning, Nathan was groggy until he felt Minx slide into bed beside him. She kissed him hard, her message clear. Miles told me what happened. You were incredible. Thank you for looking out for them. Her tone was breathless. She was completely bare, her body warm against his. I would have come sooner, she whispered, but I waited until Miles and Lucas left to see the girls. At the same time, Vanessa was barely an hour into her shift when Jill Adams cornered her at the water cooler. Did you hear about last night? She asked, eyes bright. Nathan, Clint Warner, and Marty Klein. Apparently they saved a bunch of kids from getting jumped on D Street. Vanessa froze. What? Yeah. Word is Nathan used a tire iron on one of the guys. Clint knocked another one out. Marty helped chase off the rest. Classic heroes. Your husband's a total badass. Vanessa forced a smile. Well, what exactly have you heard? I want to make sure the details are right. Jill gave a play-by-play, reveling in the drama. But Vanessa wasn't listening anymore. She was calculating. Savannah had called for help. Rick had dismissed it, told her to call AAA. So Nathan had stepped up. Again. While the man she was sneaking around with couldn't even bother helping his daughter, her husband had rushed to protect her and the rest of the kids. Risked himself to keep them safe. Vanessa's gut twisted. She had been sleeping with someone who wouldn't even answer the call for his own child's safety, while lying to and dismissing the man who risked his life for all of them. Nathan was everything Rick wasn't. And deep down, she had always known it. Later that morning, Vanessa tracked Rick down in the break room. He sat there, munching a pastry, like the world hadn't just judged him and found him lacking. Savannah called you last night, she said, her voice low and deadly. She needed help. And you blew her off. Rick blinked, then shrugged. Relax. Your husband and his crew handled it. Everyone's fine. So what's the big deal? The big deal, Vanessa snapped, voice rising, is that Nathan acted like a man while you sat around doing nothing. My son was in that car, and you couldn't be bothered to help? Rick barely blinked. If your husband's so amazing, why are you sleeping with me instead of him? That did it. You're pathetic, Vanessa hissed. Nathan's more of a man than you'll ever be. Whatever this was, it's over. Don't speak to me again. Rick leaned back, unfazed. Your loss. Plenty of women would kill for what I bring to the table. When you change your mind, you know where to find me. Vanessa turned and stormed out, tears welling in her eyes. She had traded loyalty and family for a man who couldn't be bothered to help his own daughter. And now, she could only pray Nathan never discovered just how deeply she'd failed him. Back at the house, Minx had just finished dressing when she spotted Vanessa standing in the doorway, eyes red, mascara streaking her cheeks. How could you do this to me? Vanessa cried. I trusted both of you, and this is how you repay me? Unshaken, Minx reached calmly for her shirt. I'm just following your plan, she said lightly. You wanted me to keep those busta blondes off Nathan, so I made the ultimate sacrifice. Mission accomplished. I never meant for you to sleep with him. Vanessa shouted, rage flaring. And you, Nathan, you cheated on me with this plain, skinny. Watch it, Minx cut in, voice sharp now. Your husband was miserable, Vanessa. I simply relieved the pressure you and Rick created. Vanessa's face paled. You know about Rick? Please, Minx scoffed. Everyone knows. You've been sneaking around with him for months. You cut off your husband because Rick didn't want to share. So generous of him. Vanessa's voice fell to a whisper. If Nathan knew, why didn't he confront me? Minx crossed her arms. Think it through. What do most men do when they catch their wives cheating? Vanessa swallowed hard. They get angry. Leave. File for divorce. Exactly, Minx said. So what's your plan? Move in with Rick while Nathan and Lucas stay here. I wouldn't give up my house, Vanessa said defensively. And I wouldn't give up custody of Lucas. If Nathan wants a divorce, he can leave. He'll still owe child support. Alimony. Minx nodded. That's why Nathan never confronted you. His goal's always been Lucas. Staying close, being a father. He knew divorce would cost him everything, so he stayed. But not for you. For Lucas. Emotionally, he already left. Vanessa looked down, shame settling in. We've been strangers for months. I just didn't see it. Rick made it easy for you to look the other way, Minx said. Then I came along. Just a skinny witch, right? But after you burned the bridge, I helped Nathan rebuild. I told Rick it's over, Vanessa said quietly. I don't want him anymore. Minx smirked. Let me guess. That epiphany came after he ignored Savannah's call last night. Vanessa didn't answer. Are you and Nathan moving in together now? She asked hesitantly. Not at all, Minx said simply. We're happy as we are. Miles and I are moving back to LA soon anyway. And I'd prefer he not know I've been involved with his best friend's dad. When the time comes, maybe I'll help Nathan find someone new, if he wants. You can't keep doing this, Vanessa said, voice tightening. He's still my husband. You have no right to sleep with him. You gave up that right the moment you slept with Rick, Mink said coolly. Nathan's free of any obligation to you. Unlike you, we trust each other. That's something foreign to you, I'm sure. He knows he can't be with anyone else, not while I'm still around. That's our agreement. Vanessa's knees felt weak. What if Rick lied to me? What if he's been with other women too? What if I've put myself at risk? You probably have, Mink said bluntly. Get tested. Vanessa looked down, tears falling again. What happens now? Same as before, Mink shrugged. You keep working late and avoiding Nathan. I'll keep visiting him when I can. If it isn't broken, why fix it? I can't live like that, Vanessa said, her voice hardening. You'll be gone soon. I'll stay, and I'll show Nathan I can be the wife he deserves. He won't need you anymore. Minx grinned. Except he knows my skinny ass, as you call it, has been loyal. Yours has been, well, more generous. Honestly, I control his sex life now, and I don't plan to let him near you. Neither of us wants to catch something. Vanessa straightened her back, summoning confidence. Relationships are more than sex. You might warm his bed, but I'll be the one who cooks his meals, washes his clothes, and reminds him what real commitment looks like. Great, Minx replied, amused. You clean toilets. I'll make him smile in bed. Let's see who wins. Vanessa turned to Nathan, eyes pleading. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for what I've done. Can you ever forgive me? Minx stepped forward, her voice calm but cutting. Forgiveness is one thing. Trust is another. And that's the problem you face now, like every traitor. You want to fix it? Enjoy the last few months of being Nathan's wife. After Lucas graduates, my bet is, he'll show you the door. Vanessa looked at Nathan, voice trembling. Why won't you say anything? Why do you let her speak for you? Minx answered before he could. Because I'm not just his lover, I'm his best friend. While you were sneaking around with Rick, Nathan and I built something real. Now, if you don't mind, could you leave us? We have things to discuss. Then, without looking at Vanessa, she gently pressed her finger to Nathan's lips, silencing him. Vanessa turned and left, heart pounding. And for the first time in a long time, she truly felt like an outsider in her own marriage.